Today I'm going to go over how to install a basic PCA A100 screen door from a knockdown kit. The first step we're going to do is to set our jamb. We've already framed this one up, as you can see, but when you're framing up your jamb, you want to make sure you get it at least 36 inches wide. You can even go to 36 and a quarter, and that gives you room for play. So when you lay your bottom pieces, your 1x2 on the ground, you anticipate that you're going to put the 2x2s up. And so you want that spacing between the one edge of the 1x2 to the other edge to be 40 inches. You might want to give it a little bit more, like 40 and a quarter. That way when you put your 2x2s up, it'll take off 4 inches and make it your 36-inch width, as you can see we have here. So the next step would be to get your header in place. And what I usually do when I put a header in place is I measure from both sides to 80 and a quarter inches tall. And I mark it 80 and a quarter here. $80 and a quarter there. Then I'll get the width. In this case, it's going to be 36 and 1/16. And so the next step I'll show you is how we put this header in. You'll see why I marked both sides. So now that I've cut my header, I've got it at 36 and 1/16 wide. I went ahead and installed capri clips on each side so that now I can just fasten it to the jamb. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to hold it up and put each side on that mark I made, put a level on it, and I know that I got a 1/4 inch of play, so I know that the right side, my right side, has to go up. So I'm going to get it where it needs to be, and that's where I'm going to install it. So I'm going to mark my, I'm going to go and put the screws in the left side since I know that's the side that's not going up, and then I'll level it again at the top. So I could even take it down a slight amount if I want to, because I know it's 80 and a quarter, but I like having a little bit of play, so I'm going to leave it at 80 and a quarter. That's where I want it. And it's good, as you can see, if you cut it a little snug, that way it doesn't just fall down on the other side. Have a friendly Joro spider. Okay, so now that that side's in, I'm going to put the level back on. And then I'm going to get the other side where it needs to be so things are level. All right, so now my jamb's ready. So for the next step, we're going to get the measurements of the jamb. So basically, I just draw the jamb on a piece of paper. Then we're just going to write down the exact measurements to the header. So this side I have 80 and 11/16. This side I have 80 3/8. And the top is still 36 1/16. So the next steps is I'm going to cut my Z-bar. And the instructions say just to cut the left and right side exactly. I feel like it's good to take a 1/16 off, at least that way you have a little bit of play. You can even probably take an 1/8 off for some play. Then the top, I take about 3/16 off the width, so I'm going to cut it at 35 7/8. So now we're going to measure and cut our Z-bar. When you get the measurement, you want to put your ruler, your tape measure, at this spot right here to get your measurement, because that's the part that's going to butt against the jamb at the top. So tape there. This is our left side Z-bar, and the measurement was 80 11/16, so I'm going to cut it 80 5/8. Maybe a little skinnier than that, but right around there. So mark it. One thing you want to avoid doing is if you pull the fuzz down and you cut too much fuzz off, you're going to be in trouble. So make sure you push the fuzz a little past the upper part, just a little bit. And you make your cut. We're going to do the same thing for the right side Z-bar. You hold your tape at that groove up near the top. Measure down. The right side was 80 3/8. So we're going to cut it at 80 5/16. Make sure I got a little bit of excess fuzz going over the top. And finally, for the header Z-bar, it's got no grooves or notches, so you just measure from the end to where you want it to cut. The header was 36 1/16, so we're going to cut it at 35 7/8, taking 3/16 off. Same thing with the fuzz. You want to make sure you don't cut too much fuzz off. So you stick it out the other side that you're not cutting a little bit. Then you make your cut. Next thing I like to do is I like to do some pilot holes. They have self-tap screws that come with the kit, but I feel that it's easier to install if you pre-drill your holes. So I just put at the top about 2.5 inches, 3 inches from each side. I do a hole. I don't worry about the middle. Same thing for the left and right side of the bar. I cut those. I hold them side by side so I make sure that the holes line up. So we start with the bottom. And I put it, there's like little grooves. I put it in the outermost groove, the pilot hole, so about 3 inches from the bottom. And you just kind of judge about halfway. Doesn't have to be exact. Do the same thing. And then near the top. Go about 4 inches down. So now they're ready to put in. Next step, we're going to put our Z-bars up against the frame, the jamb. And you see how much fuzz is sticking out. You want to pull it down a little bit. You don't want to just cut it right at the top, just on its own accord. You want to pull it down a little bit so that way when you put everything together, you put it in place, it butts up against the header Z-bar, so it creates a better seal. But I am going to cut some off because it's just too much. All right, got that side. A little bit there. Now, let's just see if it fits. And it does. So the measurements worked. So I'm going to go ahead and, the door is actually going to be, the hinge is going to be on this side. So you want the hinge tight to your jamb, that Z-bar tight to your jamb. The receiving side, you can always adjust it in or out because it's not getting the door, because when you put the door in, you're screwing into the jamb. But the receiving side for the latch, it doesn't have to be tight because you don't have any weight bearing on it. So you get your hinge side in with the provided screws. All right. Now the next part, you kind of do it you just pull that header down to where the metal is touching, and then sometimes it wouldn't hurt to have a few extra hands when you're doing this, but it can look a little awkward right now. But yeah, so I'm putting that in. Okay. All right, so since I had the extra fuzz that can come up, see I pulled it down when I put it in, now it's going to cover any little gap there is up top. Now I'm going to put this side in place. And like I said before, you can pull this left side Z-bar tight to it. Because it doesn't have the hinge. And then finally you put your header, your final screw in on the header. There we go. Make sure you pull that down to where the metal, these two pieces of metal are touching. All All right, so now your jam's in. You don't necessarily have to screw this side in yet, because when you put the door in, if for some reason things are a little out of whack with the way the door's hitting this side, you can either push that in or out a little bit so that you have a nice seal on that side that matches where the door's at. Even though the door's adjustable, I like to kind of leave this loose for now. And then once I get things in place, if it looks good where it's at, then I screw it in and go from there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the hinge. And so the instructions say to take the measurement you had on this and deduct 2 1/4 from it. Another Screen Mobile, Charleston, showed me a better way to do this. Is you go ahead and you just cut that Z-bar about, just take 1 inch off to begin with. So I'm just going to cut it at 79 inches. One thing you want to do when you cut it is you want to make sure you cut off the bottom of the hinge, not the top. So I know that this is going to go here. It's going to open that way. So I don't want to cut off the top. I want to cut off the bottom. So I'm going to measure the length I want it. I'm going to mark it. And when you cut it, you want the blade to start on the hinge side. If you face it this way, you're going to end up, just the metal's going to go all crazy because it's loose. And you're cutting against it toward, you know, to where it can just fold back. So you don't want to start the cut on this side. You want to start the cut on this side. So I'm not going to video that, but basically get your measurement and cut from this side. All right, so now we're going to attach the hinge. A couple of screws. I don't care greatly for how when I screwed this in that the top Z-bar wanted to kind of fold back a little bit, so I'll probably put a shim in the top just to make that more flush. Okay, so now I'm going to hold the Z-bar up, the hinge up, and kind of get it to where you see that when it's going to close, it's not going to rub the Z-bar at the top, but it's also going to get a good seal against the fuzz in the back. So that's where I want it right there. So now I'm going to put, not the top hole, but the oval hole next down to it. I'm going to put it in that hole. That way, if for some reason I don't get it in perfect, I can scoot it in or out. All right. Okay, now that top hole's in, I'm gonna put another one down here near the bottom. And you scoot the part you're screwing in, you scoot it, there's a bead going up, but you just make it snug against that bead. Okay. So the instructions say before you cut it the first time, you just take 2 1/4 off your Z-bar measurement, but here's what we're doing today is we're going to measure up from the ground 2 1/4 inches and cut it there, because what happens is when you put the bottom sweep on, to account for the sweep and the fuzz is 2 1/4 inches. And so we want it to be perfect on this side, and since you do kind of adjust the hinge up and down some, it's better to do it this way than just to take 2 1/4 off. Sometimes if you do it that way, you end up with too tight of a the hinge, the sweep on the ground is a little too tight. So we're just going to measure straight up from the ground 2 1/4 inches, mark it, and that's where we're going to cut. We're going to cut that amount off of the bottom. All right, so now that I got it marked, I just take it off. And when I put it back up, the screws are going on those same holes that I had them in before. And you can see where I marked it. That's 2 1/4 from the ground. I'm not going to video cutting it, but the same principle. You want to cut from this side so that you don't mess up your hinge. Okay, for assembling the door, it's best to lay the door out not on concrete. You do not want to scratch it, so you can either lay out a piece of cardboard. In this case, there were some spare boards I could put in place. And so when you assemble the door, I like to kind of get the corners in, but I don't screw the corners in first. I always start with the push bar in the middle, because if you tighten those up, then putting that in is a little more difficult in finding the screw holes. So I always start with this because it's a little more easy to find those holes, which in this case they had already put in. They'd already had the corners screwed in on the short pieces, so it's a little harder, but typically those aren't screwed in, and you can shift this out a little bit so you can actually see where the screw's coming through at and find your hole. And I think I have found it here. And I don't tighten those up all the way, I just get them started. And I finish them after I get the corners, but I get them started, that way it's, all it is tighten them up after I get the corners in place. All right. Okay, so now it's just getting the remaining corners. And there's a little trick to it when you do these. You kind of want to hold your little mallet. It's probably good to go ahead and get everything kind of tapped in general place, because then when you screw the screws in, it's more of a clean look. Sometimes if you don't do this right, you can have the metal not line up and be kind of wonky. So you want to go ahead and get it all tapped in place. I like to use the drill where I can set the tension limit so I don't over tighten these screws. So I just put it on 11 and it stops when it gets in good. Because if you strip these, then there's not going to hold that well anymore. So it's important not to strip them. And you can always, if you feel like it's not snug like you want, you can always loosen up the screws, readjust it, then screw it back together again. This is lining up good enough to where I don't feel like I have to undo the screws they had already put in on the short pieces. When you're tightening them all up, you can always kind of hold things in place the way you want them with your fingers. All right, we have an assembled door. Almost. Have to screw the sides in. And those are a little harder to get in, so you don't have to worry about tension as much on those. You're not going to strip these. So now that your door is assembled, you can go slide it in the hinge. Okay, now that your door is assembled, you're going to slide it in the jamb. Put my mallet down. Let me slide it in the hinge. Yeah. And you just kind of start at one point, slide it up, and then just kind of work it in all the way to the bottom. So now you're going to pull it to and look for your, you want to just tap it to where You got good coverage all around. So it looks to me like my, I'm not going to have to move this Z-bar in and out, so I'm going to go ahead and put that, screw it in place the rest of the way before I finish working on this door. Okay. Might not can see on the video, but it definitely needs to go up. You can just whack it with the mallet over there, over here. Needs to go to the left. So I'm pulling up too when I'm whacking it over so it doesn't shift down when I'm moving it. So it looks pretty good right now. I'm going to go on the inside and see if it looks as good. This side might could go up a smidge, but it's got pretty good coverage. So what I'm going to start by doing, I don't think this side needs to go up anymore, so it looks pretty good. I'm going to check from the inside again. So once you get it the way you want it, you want to put some tech screws in at the top. You want to go 4 inches down because you don't want to hit the corner key that's in there. So you want to get it in at the top. Make sure nothing shifted when you did that. And if it hasn't, and two, once you put the top in, you can kind of scoot the bottom out a little bit to raise this side over here, because it's holding that side where it is, but it'll shift the door completely up like that. But you don't want to make it rub at the bottom when you're trying to fill that at the top. So once you get that the way you want it, pop your bottom screw in. Then you go on the inside and do another one at the top and the bottom so that it's held really nicely. I don't bother putting one in the middle because it's not necessary. And plus, if you have to adjust the door at all, then you have more screw holes that you're looking at. So top and bottom is all that's needed. Now our door is in place. We'll just look at doing the sweep now. So to do the sweep, you're gonna measure from the latch side, the side that's gonna latch, you measure from there to the center of the actual hinge, the round part that everything hinges on. So you want to go to the center of that. So from the edge of the door to the center of that, and we get 35 and 5/8. So that's what we're going to cut our hinge at, is 35 and 5/8. I mean, not our hinge, but our sweep. When you do that, you can go ahead and put your fuzz in before you cut it. Same thing, you don't want to cut from that side because it'll fillet the metal up. You want to cut from this side. And before you cut, let's just say I'm going to measure from this side to what I need over here. I'm going to leave a little bit of fuzz hanging out over here. That way, once I make the cut, I can kind of slide it, the fuzz in, so we still get plenty of fuzz coming out each side, because the blade will take a little bit off on this end. So I'm about to cut that. and then I'll show you how to clip in the fuzz. Okay, so now I've cut that. I'm going to, see now even though I had a little bit of excess, it's still kind of, it's not sticking out once you kind of adjust it over. Now that fuzz, you don't want it coming in and out, and so there's some, you got to find a way to fold that metal in on top of the plastic piece to keep it from moving. So I like to use basically like metal strap cutters, metal cutters, sheet metal cutters, whatever you want to call them. And I just fold that piece in, that piece of metal in, because this pointy blade's able to do it pretty good. All right, I got that side. Try not to clip it off entirely, but if you can fold it in, that's the objective. I think I'm cutting it off. Okay, so once that's in, the metal, the fuzz shouldn't slide in and out. And so then you can put your sweep on the bottom. The fuzz side goes towards the Z-bar side. This door is going to be easy to put it on because it's not on top of concrete, but when you have it on, like on top of concrete, you're just going to have to slide it in as best you can. And then when you can't slide it in with your hands anymore, you're going to have to hit it with a mallet and just tap it till it gets in place. That needs to go in a little bit tighter. All right. Okay, now it's all the way in place. I pull it up on that side, the side of the hinge side. You pull it up all the way till it's touching the hinge receiving channel. Pull it closed. And then this side over here, you're going to have to adjust down to the fuzz is touching the ground. So one of the easy ways to do that is just take a screwdriver, insert it in the end, and just pry it down. And you keep going until you get it on top of that concrete, like so. And then you use Tech screws. Just put one back here, and you lock it in place. But yeah, you want that fuzz to be touching the ground when it closes. One issue you can run into sometimes is if you're swinging uphill, if the ground's not level, then that fuzz might rub a little hard. And so that's something you always want to talk about with the customer if it looks like that's going to be the case, and talk about options, because if the fuzz is rubbing, you're going to have to shift it up so that when it's closed, it's not touching the ground. And in that case, they're probably not going to be happy because they're not having a seal at the bottom, so bugs can get in. So that's something I always discuss with the customer beforehand. If that is the case, you can either attach a longer fuzz to the back side of the sweep, or you can put in a small threshold to deal with that. Okay, for this next little bit, I'm going to show you how to put in the handle. We got everything else put in place, the sweep, the door's in place, everything's still in right, so there's no more adjustments to be made on the door. So you basically start from the inside. I just like to take the latch and put it where I want it, which is pretty close to, you see where it's going to be going over the edge of the Z-bar. There's a little piece that you'll put in later. Usually helps it seal better, because right now it's not going to be tight when you close it, but that little piece when you put behind it will fix that. So anyway, I get my latch where I want it, and I just get that top hole. All right, so once I have that top hole, I'm going to drive it on through to the other side and try to make sure it's good and straight. Okay, And so now that I got that hole marked, I just take this piece, which they say just butt it up to the Z-bar and mark your 3 holes, but I like to mark my hole, and then I can see there's these lines that go up and down the door, so you can see how to make a straight 3 set of holes. So you just put that on straight, mark your other 3 holes, then I go on the other side and I mark my 3 holes, and keeping everything straight. And I just finish punching those holes through. Don't put your hand on the other side of the door, you'll put a hole in your finger. Swap out the 1/8 inch bit with a 1/4 inch bit and make those holes a little bit bigger. Then I just take a step bit and I make them 5/16 because that makes the handle go in a lot better. So just give it that next little. And the thing about the step bit is it kind of cleans up the holes too. All right, next part. Grab your screwdriver, your handles. See, when you put this on, that's going to go there. The spring, you push it against the door. This handle, you got your 2 screws. So I'm going to start by pushing this through where I want it. Get this in place. Get that in place. Put your screw in. Sometimes it's hard to find the other hole. Trying to get where you can see what I'm doing. Basically, once you find the other side, you just start that screw and you get your bottom screw. For some reason, I always find a hard time to find the bottom screw hole, so sometimes it can be a little frustrating. So anyway, start screwing everything in. Since your holes are bigger, you did 5/16 holes. You got a little bit of play, so get it where you want it before you snug it in. You don't want it too close to there, to the Z-bar, because if you get it too close, then you might end up, if the door shifts at all, it'll end up rubbing, and you don't want that to happen. All right, loosen it up, get that over there. All right, top snug, bottom snug. So as you can see now, they got the handle in, there's still a little play, and that's where this black piece comes in right here. If you pull the sticky tab off, you just mark where it needs to go. Hold it there, open the door, and put it in place. Now there's no wiggle, there's no give. It's a good snug fit. Sounds good. It's good and sturdy. So now we're going to start on the closer tube. Okay, so for the closer tube, you got 2 different brackets I send with the kit. If we're putting in our 2x2 metal, the bracket we're going to use is this one that hugs that corner, because let's just say you're installing it into like a wood jamb instead. Obviously that'd be way too far away from the door. So in that case, you'd be putting this bracket up and you just back it away from the Z-bar about 1/4 inch. But as you can see, that bracket won't work there, so that's why they made this corner bracket. So just depending on your application, if you have like a wood post that you mount it to, you're going to put that about 1/4 inch from the door. Z-bar. In this case, you're going to put this in. So one thing you do when you put it in is you want the center of this piece to be about even with the bottom of the door right there. And I'll show you why in a moment. So you get it right there about even center with that. Pop your screws in. Okay, that's in there. It's not going anywhere. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this piece here. You slide that on. Then you pull it out just a little bit, and then you let that piece fall down. So this tube is locked out just a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch. Then the next thing you're going to do is put it in here and just slide that pin through. Now you got it hanging. You're going to take this piece, slide it into the outermost hole. Now we're going to put that in place. And what we're going for here is when you put this in, the reason we put that right even with the bottom of this is because when you mount this up here, you want it to slope slightly highest here to down here, because this bracket, if people are opening and closing in the door and this is higher than this side, this is going to shift down and it's going to lock that tube in place when somebody's trying to close the door, and they're going to end up bending something. So you want to make sure there's a slight slope going this way, so as the door opens and closes, this bracket wants to rest out of the way. So if you put that at the bottom of this piece, there's not much of a chance that you're going to slope the wrong way. So then now you just pull this up, pop it in place. And now it's just about adjusting the tension on the closer tube. Now I can open the door, slide that out of the way, and as you see, the tube's set to super tight at first. So you're going to have to loosen that up. And usually it's just swing it open all the way, and you see, yeah, it still needs to be loosened up. I like to make it just loose enough to where it comes to a good solid latch, but it doesn't slam. So not quite, because it's still got to get past that latch. So just a little bit more. That's perfect. So, and the customer, when you show them the porch at the end of the day, they might say, yeah, let's tighten it up a little bit more, and you can adjust it with them present. So I'm going to see what yeah, that's good. That's a good spot right there. And so that's how you install your door. The rest is just screening it, and you're done.